Welcome everyone to another episode of Brothers and Boss Battles, a video game showdown. This is a podcast where my brothers and I discuss video games, new and old. I'm Anthony, and my two brothers, Pete and Tom, are here today as usual. As you know, with this podcast, we choose a category or genre of games, and we select 3 games within that genre or category to discuss. We review everything about that game, including the story, music, controls, gameplay, and more. And once those 3 games are reviewed, the 3 games enter into our special Brodown episode, the 4th in our pairing, where the 3 games go up against each other, and the 3 brothers will fight it out and declare a winner. As we've been discussing, we have games in the most recent genre and category that are based on 1990s cartoons. If you've tuned in to the prior episodes in this category, you would know that we reviewed South Park: The Stick of Truth and The Simpsons: Hit and Run. We will have our 3rd game in the category today, and that game is the Ren and Stimpy Show, Stimpy's Invention, which was released on the Sega Genesis in 1993, developed by Blue Sky Software. For those that are counting, Ren and Stimpy Show was debuted on Nickelodeon on August 11, 1991. We'll do a spoiler alert now for all the listeners. We will discuss the story, quote unquote, of this game, though it's not much, being a kind of an old Sega game. Why don't we do some initial thoughts? Tom, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I wanted to start off by saying that I'm not really a huge fan of this show. Certainly, it was on Nickelodeon back in the 90s when we were kids, and we did watch it, but I can't, honestly, I feel like I can't even recall a single episode, like a plot on a single episode of the show. So, I mean, this show didn't really stick with me. I thought it would be nice to have a little bit of context. But anyway, so to the game. Um, I do have fond memories of playing the game, however. Um, I think Pete and I played a lot to kind of co-op because, as we'll get into, this game features 2 players couch co-op support, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so I did have fond memories of this game, and I remember playing it a lot, and I was excited to get the chance to play it again.
Pete?
Yeah, I think of the 3 of us, I was probably even the most excited to play this game. I think I was probably the one who pushed for this game to be included in the podcast in general, and then certainly in this category. Um, so I'll just echo a couple of things that Tom said to set the context. Wasn't really a huge fan of the show. I maybe have a little bit stronger memory than Tom alluded to. Um, at least for like specific scenes, if not full plots of episodes. Um, and also remember playing the co-op a lot and the single player, but specifically the co-op. So I'm excited to talk about this one. And it's probably a game that a lot of our audience hasn't seen or played before.
Yeah, and I will just say, yeah, I wasn't the hugest Ren and Stimpy fan. It came out in the same time as Nicktoons was sort of debuting, with Doug and Rugrats and Ren and Stimpy rounding out the trio. And Ren and Stimpy was definitely my least favorite show out of the 3. But this game is surprisingly good, and I honestly think it can compete with the newer games in this category that we've reviewed, despite being on the Sega Genesis and coming out significantly earlier than those other 2. Um, Guys, just for all intents and purposes, we've played this on the Sega Genesis, right? Okay.
Correct. Was it released on another platform?
No, well, I mean, there's Mega Drive stuff. I just meant we didn't play
Right.
this on any sort of illegal
Yeah.
emulators
Right.
or anything.
Yes.
Right, of course. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was also on SNES. There may have been
No.
I think a different Ren and
Mm.
Stimpy game
Yeah,
was.
yeah, there's actually, I didn't know there are not quite a few, but there are more Ren and Stimpy games.
I wonder if any are as good as this.
Yeah.
Oh, spoiler alert.
Oh. All right. why don't we could just sort of go right into the gameplay. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's primarily a 2D platformer where you control both Ren and Stimpy. My brothers mentioned before that there's a two-player couch co-op with one player controlling Ren and the other one controlling Stimpy. Uh, you can also play one player and you are controlling one or the other, and you could switch between them via the pause menu. And there's essentially AI controlling the other because you're always together in the game. So that was a pretty cool, unique gameplay element of this. And why it's important is because a lot of their move sets go in tandem. They're much more useful than there are parts of the game where it's necessary to use them together as opposed to just individually.
Yeah, and whether you're controlling Ren or Stimpy, like essentially they all have the same concept of a move. So like the the down move, down B, or whatever whatever button it was. Um, if you're controlling Stimpy, he'll use Ren as a shovel, and you could like break platforms on the floor and to move to a lower level of the level. And then if you're controlling Ren, you could use Stimpy as a jackhammer, right? So they're all kind of like, and I don't know, analogous, comparable, but there are some slight variations where you may want to use Ren's move or Stimpy's move, in
Right.
particular parts of the game.
Yeah. And it was cool. I mean, Pete mentioned just the jackhammering and shoveling and just to break platforms, but that's sort of just a signal as to how unique this game was. It wasn't just a platformer or side-scrolling platformer. You had to do other things like you breaking platforms or you will talk about other sections within the main levels that where you had to ride a bike and collect things or there's a part where you get filled with helium and you have to sort of float and burp your way directionally throughout the level to progress. So the
Yeah,
overall
so
plot. Yeah, go
but
ahead.
the other moves were, they were like mobility moves where you would kind of
Like a
leap,
super jump or yeah.
right, and
That
there were attack moves where, well, like uh Ren would like almost like perform like a Heimlich maneuver type thing on Stimpy, and he would like spit out something. Um, so they're all, and there was like an also mobility move to kind of jump vertically or horizontally. And that's depending on what button you pressed, and up or down or right or left.
I'll briefly talk about the story now, and then we'll get back into the gameplay. But just because there's not much of a story. It's an old side platformer Sega Genesis game based off of kind of a crude cartoon. So basically, you are Ren and Stimpy are together. Stimpy creates this mutate-o-matic machine, which is a machine that can transform ordinary household garbage into delicious food. He goes to demonstrate it for Ren, and that winds up overloading it and it explodes. And there's five pieces from it go missing and get scattered throughout the five levels that you have to traverse through. And then you you traverse through the level, you get to the end, you pick up the part, and then at the end of the day, it's all back together and everyone's happy, 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 joy, joy. So
I didn't really like understand the plot. Like
it just was
it really
there to make.
wasn't dire. Like I don't
Well,
know.
they wanted to get the machine back up and
Yeah, I
running.
guess. Yes, that's the plot. So there was an episode of the show called Stimpy's Invention.
Hmm.
It was in the finale of season 1, but I think the plot was not anything really like the game's plot.
Yeah, and that came out on February 23rd, 1992. So I actually don't have the month in 93 that the game was released. Every online source just lists 1993 as the release. So sorry, listeners, if you can find that out or if you know, just drop a comment on one of our social media sites. But anyway, so they probably had within a year, but like Pete said, it's not really true to the episode, so they kind of just used the title and made
Yeah,
their own story.
yeah. In the episodes, so this is kind of some of the scenes that I do remember, some iconic scenes from the episode or from the show in this episode. And so Stimpy's making different inventions, and he eventually makes like this happy helmet invention for Ren because Ren is always like angry. So it's kind of not really having the effect that Stimpy wanted. So he keeps like increasing the strength of the effects until Ren starts to become like more subdued and happy, whatever. But eventually, like it kind of works too well, and Ren starts to basically lose his mind.
Mhm.
And so that's the Happy Happy Joy Joy song comes from this, and they're doing the dance. And then like as they're dancing to the song, Ren smashes the helmet. I don't know if you guys
Oh yeah, I do
remember that.
remember that.
It's
Yeah.
pretty iconic.
Yeah, but the Happy Happy Joy Joy song, they did carry that over to this
Yeah,
episode because spoiler alert, when you beat the game, they sort of perform that song in MIDI and
yeah. In the game, they
yeah,
carried over to the
in
game.
the
Yeah,
game, right? That's what I meant. Yeah.
yeah. So the
I will-
moral of that episode, just to wrap up, was that like Ren realizes like for him, true happiness is being angry.
So all right, let's get back to the gameplay though. Tom, what did you think about the gameplay in this game? Being an older Sega game, and we've covered more modern games primarily on this show so far within the first year of it. So
Yeah, it was surprisingly advanced, I feel, for a game of the time. Just with the y so yeah, I mean, there was a lot that you needed to do in order to get through the levels. Like, it wasn't just kind of like, "Oh, yeah, we'll throw these, moves in to give the illusion of,
The
like, the
details, like a full
yeah, like
package. Yeah,
right, exactly. So, like, yeah, I mean, that was cool, and the fact that they let you switch while playing single player, to switch characters to kind of, use who is best suited for the situation was cool. And it also, it made it cool when playing with multiplayer, just to to have the coordination between the two people playing to always get the get the right combination or whatever, or
yeah,
make the right choice. And it was playing through it again, it was a lot more difficult, I felt, when having to have those two people coordinated,
yeah,
because
yeah,
when
it's
playing single player, it's really just the second character really just follows exactly what you do,
right, pretty
and they
much.
don't make any of the decisions as far as abilities to use.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a harder game playing couch co-op than just using the AI of the computer controlled
yeah.
character.
It's
Um,
harder, but in a fun way.
yeah, yeah. It's I watched you guys recently when you did your replay and it's like you feel like Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah,
You, you feel like Ren Hoek and Stimson J Cat. But
wow,
yeah, I mean
dropping some Ren and Stimpy knowledge on us.
yep, yep. It is true though. It was surprisingly advanced because we'll get to like the level things, but there's Pete mentioned the move with the digging and the jackhammering, but there's also moves where you had to sort of do what essentially was a high jump or an extended jump um, by using the characters. Ren would uh, squeeze Stimpy and they would sort of like propel themselves upwards together. Or Stimpy would use Ren as like a helicopter, and that would allow them to jump wide chasms or sort of escape getting hit by certain enemies. So that was pretty interesting, and yeah,
Yeah, and there was never a situation that like you had to use Ren's move or Stimpy's move, but as we mentioned, certain moves were better in certain situations. So like
yeah,
they didn't have to make you have the ability to switch between characters. They could have just said, okay,
yeah.
you select Ren and now you play through the whole thing with Ren. Because it wasn't like it wouldn't have like blocked you out from
I don't know.
beating any levels.
I have to say I never really felt the need to use one versus the other, since they all have the same. They're graphically different moves, but they all do the same thing. I always, but with that said, I did kind of like Ren being Ren and using Stimpy. So like I preferred that sort of squeezing Stimpy's stomach and jumping high as opposed to the Stimpy using Ren as the helicopter. So like I just kind of stuck with Ren.
I don't know. I felt certain situations, but what about the horizontal mobility move?
Yeah, I liked when you're controlling Ren and you go on Stimpy's back and jump forward more so than because the one with Stimpy, you kind of like skip forward, and if you kind of did something near an edge, I feel like you would fall into it before you'd skip over it. He kind of used
That was like the pogo stick
with a
one,
pogo
right?
stick, yeah.
Yeah. You're right. Yes.
So like in that, I just felt I liked Ren controlling Ren better overall. So like I did see the differences, but I never really felt the need or the desire to use Stimpy. So I guess
Yeah.
that I guess that's what I'm saying. But
In one instance, where Stimpy was better, and this is more minor than the mobility ones. Was when if you were trying to attack someone above you, because Ren would grab Stimpy's nose and throw it, but
yeah,
Stimpy would grab Ren and throw him.
yeah, he
So it
was
was
a
just easier.
bigger
Yeah.
hitbox, bigger
Yeah.
hitbox. Yeah. Yeah, that I guess is true. But as far as like traversing the levels, and this is sort of a big thing about this game. It's 5 levels. They each have like 3 parts, except for the last level. You find one of the Mutatomatic's parts in each at the end of each level, uh, but they're very short. I mean, each level, without dying in it, is probably like 5 minutes long. I mean, you literally can beat this game in 25 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very quick.
I mean,
That's
and that's
probably like one strike against it.
yeah, that's a big downside. And I think, unlike a lot of games back then, this one's not that hard either. So it's like you can legitimately beat it on normal setting uh, in 25 minutes. You get 3 or 4 lives per continue, and then you get continues, and then you also get a password, so you could start at the beginning of the previous level, essentially where you died, so or the level of which you died, just on the first portion of that. So it's a very easy game, um,
I
and yeah,
no. Yeah. I think legitimately, if someone picked this game up for the first time, someone like us, not a 7-year-old, but someone an experienced video game veteran, could beat this game in within an hour, easy. They might die
well,
a
yeah,
few times and have to start over
yeah,
the
yeah.
level, but
Yeah, and like Tom said, I think that's a strike now reviewing it. I mean, back then it was cool because so many games are impossible, and
yeah,
like this one was like both possible and a good game. So it was like, and I don't know, like I never really counted that as a strike against it growing up, and I don't think you guys did either. It was just like, okay, let's play it again. Let's play it again. I'll be
Yeah,
Ren this time, and you be Stimpy, and
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
it was fun enough where it was fun just to replay it again.
yeah,
Replay value.
I don't know that I would consider that replay value. It was just fun to replay.
this conversation again. But
So,
all
what do you
right,
guys think of
yeah.
like just in general the controls? Because I had noted like the controls feel very tight to me for a 30-year-old game.
Uh, they're tight for a 30-year-old game. The one portion where I felt they weren't tight was in that level that we'll get into more detail about when you're biking away from the dog catcher and then have to jump over the cars. You you really had to land and set and then press jump. Like if you press, like it wouldn't continuously
Man, you
jump
really had a
even when
hard
you press
time
the.
with that level.
Nah, it was
That was
that's
the
it
easiest
wasn't
level
a
in the whole
tight control.
game.
It wasn't a tight control. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, it took me 2 seconds to beat that, so I didn't notice the bad controls, I guess.
Anyway,
Yeah, I don't know about that, but in some instances, I felt it was a little tough. Like I think there's the one level where you need to like jump on like, you're in like that kind of like weird alternate dimension level, and
yeah,
there's like the Stimpy noses with the nose hair coming out of it,
yeah.
and to
Yeah, and the
like,
eyeballs. Yeah,
yeah, I feel like to jump and like actually grab that nose hair to climb up, I feel like I don't know. You had to be very precise with like when you press the button to like grab it.
yeah, you're right. That was the only problem I had with the controls, because even in one of the later levels where you have to grab onto the pipe and like the green
The pounds.
ooze
Yeah, I
is,
was thinking
yeah,
that too. I
Yeah,
was
yeah, that too. Yeah.
like something as simple as just trying to jump onto the pole to, progress and climb up it, it took you a couple of times sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, that
That was
didn't
the one
feel
problem
great.
I had. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I don't know if it's really controls, but sometimes when like you used, for example, the ability to jump horizontally, like sometimes when you land, like one of the characters would be slightly ahead, and then if you're like near the edge of a cliff, they would fall down or something like that. So I don't know that that's necessarily controls, but it was still annoying because
Yeah.
you have to kind of predict like where
Yeah.
both characters are gonna land, and it's just I don't know. That was a little cumbersome. I mean, not a huge complaint, but
Well, basically, it made you have to land more in the center of whatever platform you were jumping towards on,
yeah. And then
or
it's just,
towards the beginning.
but then also like the move where you throw Ren like a boomerang. Like
Yeah.
sometimes he could
Yeah.
like get caught on something, or like he'll go behind you into a hole or something like that. So some things like that were a little kind of wonky.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
Those are all valid. Yeah.
yeah, but overall it was cool. And it was cool. It included a lot of controls, and the Sega Genesis had the 3 buttons, so it was able to kind of pair that with directional inputs for different moves. So I mean that was, whether they be attacks, whether they be high jumps, whether they be forward jumps. So that was really cool. Um, maybe let's discuss some of the level design, and for the listeners, there was 5 levels as we mentioned. There was the neighborhood, the zoo, the city, the pound, the outdoors, and then the last stage is sort of like the Mutatomatic itself, or that weird like sciency kind of level. That's when you're really. I think that's supposed to represent you shutting it off at the end. Um, that that's what that is.
Mm.
What did you guys think?
This is the honest opinion, not making fun of you, but my favorite part was that bike part. So you're on like a tandem bike, and the first part is you're
Well, I wasn't
biking.
talking about that, but go ahead. No, I meant more like the look of the level. How did it compare to the show?
Oh.
Like a lot of this, I can really feel the show in this game.
Mm, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, the graphics. I think the graphics are good, like really good for a Genesis game. They don't quite have that same art style as the show did, but I mean, that was probably impossible to replicate back in those days.
Yeah, but it's really good graphics. I mean, Sega was always a cut above that for that era anyway. But I just mean like there's like that boss battle that you face against the wrestler.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that was it. I read that episode. I do remember where they kind of like
Me too.
they wind up winning, or they they use a sleeper hold by biting the back of the wrestler's head as like a sleeper hold or something like that. So, but those wrestler images were from the show. And then that whole like weird level that you had mentioned before, the outdoors where it's like the eyes and the rotted teeth and Stimpy's
Yeah.
nose hair, like all of that was part of the show. Since, for those that don't know, it was a very sort of crude show, even though it was a Nicktoon.
Yeah. I remember the episode where like Ren has the tooth, and then he gets like, I guess, a dream, and all his teeth fall out.
Yeah.
Um,
So anyway,
and
I just thought,
Ren and Stimpy themselves looked good.
yeah, oh yeah, it wasn't like pixelated poorly
Yeah.
or anything. Like it looked like a cartoon almost, like not the crispest cartoon, but
Yeah,
still pretty good.
it was colorful, and I feel like it represented the show nicely that way.
Yeah. All right, Pico, talk about the biking so you can make fun of me now.
No, well, that was a particularly fun level playing cooperatively, because like one person could pedal and or kind of throttle back, so moving forward or back, and the other person could jump. You had to jump over cars that were in the way as you were being chased by the truck. And then the second half of that part of the level is like you're kind of on a downward slope, and then you have to jump over like potholes and stuff, or you could jump and collect items. So
That's
that was just
neat.
fun to play cooperatively.
Yeah. And I guess it's a good time to mention there was the standard sort of 2D platforming that is the main category of this type of game, but there was that bike level. There was I had mentioned the one where you get filled up with helium and you have to traverse sort of like farting or burping out the gas, and that would propel you. And then there's enemies and thorny bushes and stuff in the way. So like that was a unique level. And then there's another one where you're sort of riding that weird contraption where Ren is like using a like one of those things you would puff up a fire in a fireplace with, and
A
Stimpy's pedal
bellows.
a bellows, yeah, and Stimson J Cat is pedaling and on the bike, and that's actually one of the later levels where you then have to. There's a bunch of items shooting up and down, and one of them is a piece of the mutato-matic that you have to collect, and so along with the 2D platforming elements, it added these other more unique type of game styles within the game, which was a really cool addition, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Like they managed to keep it fresh in, a 25-minute, half-hour game.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I guess one thing about a game being that short is that it doesn't get boring. They didn't even need that extra stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mentioned the items. It was just like things that you basically get more points. And then after you get a certain amount of points, I guess you get an extra life or you get more health. There's like
Yeah.
ice cream cone and a couple of different things, a bag of money.
Yeah, there was like the powdered toast drink or whatever, and that would give you some health.
Yeah. Speaking of powdered toast, I thought that was awesome that they included him. So like we talked a lot about if
Powdered
you did
toast man, by the
powdered
way.
toast man, yes. If you some of the moves and some one of the two characters might fall off, and then if that was the case, powdered toast man would basically retrieve that character and bring him back to the other character who was remaining on the platform. And I guess that took up some health, I think.
Yeah, and he would say, "Leave everything to me."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was a cool way to add another character into the game. Not playable, but just calling back to the show. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. I think it'd be cool if we just go through each of the levels since there's such a small amount of them, and talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, effect on the gaming world. No, just kidding. I got in my spiel mode there. Um,
I
so
like
the
this game, but I don't think it impacted the gaming world too
Yeah,
much.
yeah. We'll leave the effect on the gaming world discussion at that. But let's go through the levels. You start off in what's called quote unquote the neighborhood. It's three parts. It's an outside part, and you go into like this kitchen of a house part, and then you're like in the freezer section of the refrigerator in this house part. So
That's that second part where you're like in the house is so incredibly easy and it's like short. It's just basically
that's just platforming.
yeah, a couple enemies are coming at
Yeah,
you
hit the
at
enemy.
a steady rate, and you just hit them and keep walking. Um,
I will say when I like replayed it, that very first level, it's just a little tricky to. There's like those self-moving lawnmowers that you have to either kill or avoid, and there's a bunch of like holes that you can't fall in. It's not hard, but it's
It's a
it just
nice
took.
introduction to the game.
Yeah, and because there's so many moves, you have to kind of learn what the moves do. So I think part of it is just you'll mean to jump upwards, but you'll do a forward jump right into a hole or something. So it's just more so because it's where it's positioned in the game, which is the first part of the first level, and you're getting used to the controllers.
yeah, that happened to me too, where it took me. I don't know, 10 minutes to kind of get comfortable with doing whatever move I intended to actually do.
What was interesting is that this didn't really have one of those quote unquote unique portions. It was really three sections of platforming.
Yeah, then the freezer section is more vertical
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's
platforming.
more of a vertical platforming as opposed to side scrolling. So and that repeats in other parts of levels in this game, which was even that's a cool little variation than your standard just side scrolling 2D platforming.
Yeah, definitely.
So after you get one of the pieces at the end of the neighborhood level, you go to the zoo level. Uh, Anyone want to give some thoughts on that?
I feel like they really amped up the difficulty in the first section with the hippo platforming.
Yeah, this is
Yeah, I mean, so you had to use your ability, your horizontal movement ability a lot in this one.
and also the ranged attack essentially,
Yeah,
like
yeah, if
the
you want to
ranged
do it
tandem attack.
properly.
Yeah, because you would hit
Yeah,
the hippo so that it would close its eyes and mouth, and then you'd be able to jump on its head. But you had to continuously do that.
Yeah, but they also like kind of mess with your mind a little because there were other times where you didn't have to use the horizontal mobility move, where it was just a short jump and you just used a regular one. And actually, if you use that move, then you would like overshoot it.
Right.
And then these are the hippos were going up under and above water, so like there was a time element to it too, or a timing and a
Yeah.
clock element.
yeah.
It,
And then
it's
this, sorry, go ahead. Uh,
no.
yeah, so this section also contained the part with the giraffes, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, they kind of jump over them and
yeah,
Yeah, it's sort of like a misdirection. They're just like these background giraffes that look all nice and friendly, and then you walk near them and they become vicious and chomp down on you. So that's one of the sections you could kind of like try to stop and go in between them as they're coming down, or jump over them with one of the high jump attacks. But yeah, that was a tricky part. There are a lot of enemies in this game that I feel you're inevitably going to get hit, and again, that I feel that's sort of a feature of the Sega, Super Nintendo, NES kind of time period of
yeah.
games.
Yeah, that was something I noted as well. I mean, I'm sure you could go online and find someone who had a perfect playthrough who didn't get hit, but it feels like the intention is that you're going to get hit a decent amount of times. And you do have a decent amount of health too, so it's not a huge problem.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the health's there. I mean, again, it's not. I didn't feel it's impossible to sort of die within the level, but you get a lot of lives, you get a lot of continues, you get the passwords. So
yeah.
I
Sometimes it's kind of like you get to the situation where it's like, this is too hard. I'm just gonna walk through it and get hit. You know,
yeah, it's true. Um,
which is like uh, like you said, it's not impossible to die, so you don't want to be doing that too much. But
yeah.
yeah, you can get away with it from time to time.
So after that hippo/giraffe portion of the zoo level, you then go into the sort of like a house of monkeys, and they're throwing banana peels at you, and you have to avoid that. And there's also some enemies on the ground that are trying to hit you. So you're kind of traversing that, and that's somewhat of a mix of horizontal and vertical platforming.
Yeah, that one was really difficult for me the first one or two times. Um, then you kind of learn the best route to take, or
Yeah.
the patterns. It's pretty typical of the time period for games.
Yeah, and then the last portion of that level is the sort of the first unique section where it isn't really just a 2D platformer, and that's the you get filled up with helium balloons, and you have to again sort of go vertically and horizontally to traverse to the end and get the mutatomatic part that you need from this level. And that part's really tricky because the controls are really slippery, and you could hit into each other and bounce far apart.
Yeah, and they put the invention piece in a very precarious location where you have to go around this kind of thorny bramble or whatever.
Yeah, and
And
it's a real like tight squeeze.
yeah, so if you and it's right at the end of the level, obviously. So if you get there with barely any health left. You have to be perfect to get that at
And
the
you
end.
guys had a little interesting time playing this part when you replayed it, right?
Is there something specific you're referring to? I mean, it
Well,
was fun.
it's just sort of the bouncing off each other. I remember you guys
Yeah,
a little bit
yeah.
of tension there when you.
That's inevitable. But this is the one part of the game where I felt it was actually a little easier playing co-op, because when you play single player, like the other character that you're not controlling is just like hovering around you the whole time, so you
Yeah.
just keep bumping into them.
And then if you bump into them, even at the slightest speed, you go blasting off as if you're a rocket,
Yeah,
like in the other
yeah,
direction.
yeah. But this, I don't know, this level was a lot of fun with two people.
Yeah.
Tom, do you agree?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
It's like
It's
if you're not the person.
Yeah, if you're watching two other people play.
yeah. I mean, it's yeah, it's good that you can talk to each other, and yeah, I would advise that if you're playing with somebody that you do that.
Yeah, so that was cool. That was the cool, like the first whatever special level or whatever you're calling it.
Right.
All right, so what was after that?
The city, which the first two portions are essentially mirror images of each other. You're kind of just horizontally and vertically traversing buildings and tops of buildings. There's sort of these like mean firefighters that are one of the enemies, and there's these birds that are like pooping on you that are another enemy. But you're really just trying to get through. Oh, the jackhammers that are controlling themselves.
Yeah, there's one portion where you climb on a clothesline basically and walk across. I have to say, this is probably the level I cared for the least.
It's the most boring, and
Yeah,
again, it's because two of the three parts are essentially the same thing.
yeah.
But it does end with your favorite, Pete, with the
Mm,
biking level, like
yeah,
biking.
and this is another one that's definitely more fun when you play. Well, the whole game pretty much is, but especially these sort of special levels. Like this one is definitely more fun when you play co-op. And like I think I mentioned earlier, usually one person's assigned the jumping and one person's assigned the pedaling.
This I feel is the most iconic part of the whole game.
Yeah,
Like,
and we didn't talk
like
about the music, but the music in this level is also cool.
oh yeah, it gets very
Uh,
frantic.
well, that's a classical piece. I forget which one, but they just kind of made it a little bit more cartoony.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'd hum it, but it's just so stupid if I do it, so I won't. But
yeah. Please don't.
all right. So what was next?
I don't know. What was next? I didn't keep track of the levels and
It
the
was
orders.
the pound.
Oh, the pound.
So you start in it kind of looks like a jail for animals where they have the
All right.
cells and the things are falling from the ceiling.
Yeah, that was annoying.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was hard to see sometimes.
They're basically like little, like they were openings. Only if you think of it as like a tile, and like a tile of the ceiling was missing, and then the thing would fall down.
Right. Yeah. So that was the first portion. I mean, again, nothing too much of note there.
Yeah, yeah, that was platforming, more or less.
Yeah, you had to use your the uh
Shovel.
the shovel or jackhammer ability, so that was cool. Yeah, so I think after that was it was another one of these vertical platforming levels where they have the spike balls swaying back and forth, and you
Right.
need to.
And that
That was
was
actually
tough.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah, it was
cool, but
tough, but it was a nice challenge.
yeah, you had to use your sort of your combo jump and then also duck when the balls are coming, and it involved an element of timing as well. It wasn't just sort of blind platforming, so that was cool. And then it ends with that boss battle fight against the wrestler, where essentially you're not fighting him, you're just sort of literally running out the clock, waiting for it to fall off and knock him out, and then you collect the clock because that's one of the items of the Mutato-matic that you need to get. So I thought that was fun. It's essentially he does like a high jump butt slam move, and you have to run underneath him so he doesn't smash you with that move.
Yeah, I remember we kept getting hit, and we forgot that you could run.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing you could do is kind of do like a speed burst and run
Yeah.
underneath them. So that was like once you figure it out, it's easy. That's a section you can literally beat without getting hit, and it's not
Oh yeah.
difficult at all. But
Yeah.
yeah,
We were talking about like the spike balls that were swinging. One thing that was this is a minor criticism, but like sometimes or a lot of times when you were on the platform below and you had to jump up, you couldn't really see that ball. But then if you kind of jumped or did a move that got you higher, but then you went back down to the platform you were originally on, then it kind of shifted the camera up a little, so then you could see
mhm.
the ball and more time. That's kind of a little annoying thing. I'm pretty sure in the solo player, you could actually hold the D-pad up or down a little, and it would kind of just shift the camera.
Yeah, yeah,
But you couldn't do that in the multiplayer,
right.
which was a little annoying.
And then perhaps the most unique level, the outdoors was next, and that was sort of the weird level with the first portion is with the rotted teeth and the mosquitoes and the logs floating in the sky and climbing up Stimpy's nose hairs and all of that. Uh and then eventually you get to the part where you're on that again like a tandem bike, but instead of traversing as a bike does, you're use the bellows to inflate and deflate and propel yourself in the air, and you eventually collect the item you need. And this wasn't a particularly hard level, but it was very aesthetically interesting, and it brought in that weirdness of from the Ren and Stimpy show. Probably better than any other level.
Yeah, yeah. This one was also a little boring to me. It wasn't my favorite, but in comparison to what was it, the city level that I mentioned earlier, that was
Yeah.
boring. Like this one at least really made you feel like you were in Ren and Stimpy. So I liked it for that anyway, even if it wasn't the most fun to play.
And then finally, you're in the last level is the Mutato-matic, where you're kind of traversing all of these sciencey things, and then eventually getting to the last portion to shut off the Mutato-matic. And that's pretty cool because the last portion of it, it's like these on-off switches, and you have to jump on them to push them off. And then, but there's this electricity that goes between two of the four levers. So you have to sort of time where the electricity is going to go next and make sure you're not there for it to hit you. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
There's
and
a lot of
if a lever was down for too long, then it would start to slide back up.
right, and then that was probably the trickiest level because you start off, you're on those sort of acid bubbles that can break if you stand on them too long, and you have to get out of this big beaker, and then you have to platform upwards on like these. It's almost look like Christmas lights, but if they light up when you're on it, they give you damage. So that was, I think, the hardest level of them all.
Yeah, even when you had to like blow out the candle on the cupcakes, I feel
Oh,
like
right.
the window, that you had to do that without getting hit was very short.
Right. Again, they liked bellows in this game because you like jump on the bellow and it blows out the candle, but then the candle reignites very quickly. And sometimes you'd get caught jumping over the
Yeah,
candle.
especially doing that multiplayer, I felt was difficult because you had to really like time when you landed and jumped
Yeah,
very closely together.
yeah, yeah. I really like this last level a lot,
Yeah,
especially the. I think it was the first part where you're on the bubbles. I really like that part.
yeah. I think I forget if it was both of you. You kind of mentioned that biking scene um, as the most iconic for me. I really, and maybe just because it's towards the beginning of the game, but I always remember that zoo level. And like that really seemed to be a pretty iconic portion. But what was your guys' favorite?
Yeah, well, I already gave mine the bike.
Yeah, it's hard to pick one. I mean, I think that last level is good. It's a nice challenge. Compared to the rest of the game, I feel like they kind of combine a lot of mechanics there. Yeah, yeah, it's fun to be challenged.
What was
I
your favorite part?
Yeah, I like the sandwich ends. I like the beginning. I like the first couple levels, and I like that last level the best. All right, let's take a quick break, go to our mid episode filler, and we will then come back. All right, and for today's mid-episode filler, we will be discussing other 90s cartoons, not those that are the subject of review of this podcast, but we'd like to ask, since we're talking about Ren and Stimpy today, what is your favorite Nicktoon from Nickelodeon, particularly from the 1990s era? Give us your thoughts on Instagram or X at Bros Boss Battles. That's BROS Boss Battles. Leave a message on our website, brothersandbossbattles.com, or anywhere you get these podcasts. We'd specifically like to ask, what is your favorite Nicktoon? 1. Doug. 2. Rugrats. Or 3. Rocko's Modern Life. Again, hit us up on Instagram or X at Bros Boss Battles, BROS Boss Battles, our website, brothersandbossbattles.com, or leave us a comment wherever you get this podcast. Make sure to subscribe to get all of our content, and now back to the regular show. All right, we're back, and we just gave a quick run through of each of the levels and our thoughts on them and our favorite parts. Why don't we discuss the music here? This game, even though it had the MIDI music, it was it did bring on elements from the show. And thought they did a good job for a Sega game.
Yeah, the opening, before you even press start to play the game, has the song from the show,
The log song.
the log song, yeah. And then, as you mentioned at the end, there's the happy, happy, joy, joy.
Yeah, and it's in MIDI, but it is, it follows the show pretty.
Yeah, it sounded good. I mean, I think, and then there are even points where Ren and Stimpy themselves, they have a few lines, and they sounded good. Like they sounded like how they sounded in the show.
Oh yeah, Ren says, "You stupid idiot."
Yeah. And
Yeah,
Stimpy says, joy.
yeah. Like picking up the items.
Right. And then Powder Toast Man, as we said before, says, "Leave everything to me."
Yeah. He had that little jingle. I don't know. I assume that was from the show. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't recall. But yeah, I mean,
But-
the background music, none of it really stands out to me.
Well,
No, other
aside
than-
from the bike level.
Yeah.
which again is a classical piece. But that last level, the outdoors level is sort of like that eerie, sort of like,
Yeah, that's the only one
Yeah.
I remember. Really.
almost played on like a theremin type of instrument. It was
Yeah. They had noises like we were talking about the giraffes, like when they try to bite, it's like a kind of
they
noise.
crunch and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they did a good job again with the sound too, graphics, like those sort of, logistical things were all pretty good as far as this game is concerned.
Yeah. And maybe that's another reason why I was so fond, or we were so fond of it at the time. Like, I don't know, you pick up a different game, which is maybe Mario for NES, which is an excellent game. But then you pick this up and it looks and feels just so much more modern and advanced.
There really is a lot of good things to say about this game. I think one of the I think how short it was a little glaring. Um
Yeah.
and elements of ease. I mean, playing on normal was almost like playing on easy. I mean, to this game's credit, it did have an easy, normal, and hard difficulty setting, so that was that's good as well. I haven't. I'm sure I played it on hard back in the day. I didn't for the replay for this podcast, so I don't know if you guys remember back in the day playing it on different difficulties.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't remember. I doubt we played on hard.
This is the type of game that would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool that they include the different difficulties. Yeah, I mean, I felt like normal was pretty easy, but I don't know, maybe it was just right where it needed to be. Like, you could
Yeah.
get through the game.
Yeah.
fairly comfortably, but there was still some challenge.
Yeah, there was some challenge. Wasn't that it was just so darn easy? It was just with the continues and then with the passwords, like there wasn't a lot of penalty for dying. I guess there was a little penalty, but
Yeah, you
you know,
might have to start over to the beginning of a level, but
level, yeah. But I feel like a lot of games at this time wouldn't have had the passwords. You would have had a few lives, and then if you didn't beat it within a few lives, you would have to like start all over again.
yeah. Which I don't always
That's no
necessarily.
good either.
Yeah, the fact that it had lives plus a couple of continues, where I think that made it where the password is probably a bit superfluous.
Yeah, but I agree. That's probably the biggest knock on the game is just not how easy it was, but just how short it is.
All right, if no one has anything to add, we could give our final thoughts and recommendations. Pete, why don't you start us off?
All right. So obviously, I think it comes across that I really liked this game when I was younger, and I still really like this game, having just replayed it for this episode. Um, I definitely think the cooperative play adds a huge element of fun. And so, if I'm going to recommend or not recommend this game, I think playing it solo player, maybe it's not worth the effort to try to procure this game somehow. But if you're someone who's kind of looking for some, relatively casual, like a couch co-op game with, with your partner or whatever it might be, I would definitely, highly recommend this game. Um, and just one other thing I want to impress upon the audience is that sometimes games from, you know, 30 years ago, they're they were great and they're still very good, but they just feel outdated when you go back and play them. And this one, there's obvious limitations, but this one didn't feel that way to me. I really felt like it holds up really well. So that's my concluding spiel.
All right, I'll go next. Yeah, I like this game. There's really not much bad to say about it, other than it's short and maybe a little bit easy, but it has elements of it that are fun. You don't really need to be a Ren and Stimpy fan to enjoy the game, which which is good. I mean, obviously, if you're a Ren and Stimpy fan, there are little throwbacks from the show that will make you enjoy it more. But it's really just a solid 2D platformer with other elements added in, that anyone could pick up and play. So I would recommend, if you can, get an old Sega and an old copy of Ren and Stimpy. Uh, Play it. It's not going to take you much time, and if it was back in the day and people were paying $60 for this, it might be a little bit of a problem. But it's yeah, I've seen them on places for like $10. I think it's worth it to pick it up if you have a Sega, and give it a go. It's fun. Tom, why don't you round this off?
Yeah, so similar to what you guys said, I really enjoy this game. I wouldn't go out and spend $100 for a Sega Genesis and however much for $10 for this game, so $110 in total just to play this game. I mean, if you're if you're
There you
a
go, Pete. Some
collector,
math.
if you're a collector or if you already have a Sega Genesis, then I'd recommend shelling out the $10 for this game. It's fun, and then I'm sure you can find one other person to play with, and that'll make the game even more fun. I mean, it is short, like we said, and it felt easy, but I also think that when you bump this up to the hard mode difficulty, I don't think it's gonna feel so easy anymore. So, uh, yeah, I mean, definitely recommend it if you can get a hold of it.
All right, there you have it. The Ren and Stimpy Show, Stimpy's Invention for the Sega Genesis. Thank you everyone for listening to another episode of Brothers and Boss Battles, a video game showdown. Make sure to visit our X and Instagram sites at Bros Boss Battles, that's BROS Boss Battles, our website at brothersandbossbattles.com. And be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time for our Bro Down episode where these 3 games based on 1990s cartoons go up against each other. All right, till next time. Bye.